Hello, I'm Trevor Alonso, and this is my spoiler review for Avengers Endgame. That's right, this is gonna have spoilers. This is your one and only warning, spoilers. We're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about as much as I can remember. I've seen this once, and I had to make notes. And even after that, I still didn't include everything. Like, it's gonna be impossible to include everything. Well, okay, it's gonna be possible, but until I see it more than once, it's gonna be really hard to mention everything. Alright, so if you haven't seen the movie, please stop now. I'm gonna stick to just the movie here. If you want to hear my rant about the box office and all that stuff, I have that in my non-spoiler review. If you want to hear my review without getting any spoilers, again, go back to my non-spoiler review. Okay, here we go. The movie begins extremely sad, or at least you get a sense of it's going to be sad right away when you see Hawkeye's family. And then they disintegrate. Just right away, off the bat, it gets emotional. And I guessed it already that Hawkeye's entire family goes, but man, when you see it, it's sad. Then we get 22 days or 23 days, I'm not really sure. Roughly 3 weeks later, from Infinity War, Tony Stark and Nebula are still in space. They talk about the ship that they're on. They had to make repairs because during the battle there was some damage to the batteries, I believe, and that they're literally running out of supplies and that he's gonna run out of air tomorrow. So Tony Stark believes he is going to die. He records a message for Pepper in case she ever finds it. Him and Nebula play some football. And what I mean by football, they mean like paper football. And for a minute there, I thought he was gonna die right here, thinking, okay, maybe there's time travel later on, maybe there's something. I just wanted to see what would happen. Then Captain Marvel appears out of nowhere and saves them. So I assume if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, you kinda need to see it before this, or at least the end credit scene. She appears at the end of Captain Marvel. She asks, "Where's Fury?" since the pager went off. I assume they sent her into space looking for Tony, since they know he's in space. Captain Marvel is that powerful and she's that strong. She can go into space. She can go far into space. She brings them back to Earth, and when they come back, you can really see a toll on everybody. And Pepper meets him, and they talk about how they all lost. Tony still feels that he lost big, and Captain America lets him know that we all lost. Also, when you see the trailer and you see the movie, I guess there was some post-special effects stuff they did to Tony, because he looks extremely skinny here. And when I've looked over the trailers lately, just doing these videos, he looks like his normal self. So I feel like they did the stuff that they did in Captain America, where they made Chris Evans really skinny. They made Tony Stark really sickly here. They have a meeting. They're asking Tony if he knew anything that Thanos said, if he said anything to where he might go or what he might do next. And Tony's mad. He tells him everything again, and he gets angry. There's still that hurt. There's still that argument from Civil War. So things are not all good and golden right away. They're not like, alright, let's all get together right away and kick Thanos' ass. It is, you suck. You should have listened to me. I warned you all. Tony takes the arc reactor off his chest, hands it to Steve, and says, the next time you see Thanos, put this on and hide. Granted, at the end of Civil War, there was a note that said we're still friends, but really and truly, they're not. And you even feel that at the beginning of Infinity War, where he's like, you gotta call Cap. He's like, we're not in speaking terms. They go into space without Iron Man. They get the information from Nebula, and they see somewhere on another planet, Thanos used a glove again. So they use that information to go after Thanos. And when they go see Thanos, he's injured. And it looks like he's either cooking a stew, like drinking some tea, living the villain retirement plan, which seems cute. Even War Machine says that's cute. Thanos has a retirement plan. And they go in, guns hot and everything. Captain Marvel knocks him out. They all grab him. They cut off Thanos' arm right away. Thor isn't taking any chances. Then it's revealed he doesn't have the stones anymore. He reduced them to atoms using the Infinity Gauntlet, believing that any use of the stones now would just be for selfish use, and that he's made his whole prophecy and destiny that he thought to the fullest. He even tells the Avengers that they should thank me. Everyone becomes distraught right away because that was their only chance to save everyone. Thor, with his anger, kills Thanos by chopping off his head. Yeah, this time around he's not messing around at all. He aims for the head. Okay, they did a really good job about the marketing. All the stuff they released for the trailers and the clips they release is from this beginning. There might be a couple of tiny stuff here and there later on, but man, majority of it was just the beginning, and a good chunk of it was from one scene. We cut to 5 years later. We see the world has somewhat adjusted to what's happened, but no one's really moved on. Captain America is like in charge of a group that's counseling people trying to get over what's going on. We see like an overhead shot of like ships at the sea, all gathered at the same port, cars left everywhere. One of the Russo brothers is in the group. I'm not sure which one, and I know people are going to kill me in the comment section for that. I've only seen this one time. We find out Black Widow is like in charge of the other Avengers, kind of taking charge of over the world and kind of the galaxy, I guess, with Captain Marvel, having everyone just check on different situations that's happened since Thanos' snap. Also, Captain Marvel looks like she currently does in the comics with shorter hair. Also, at this point, she says, I'm not going to be around for a while. She kind of could have just looked at the camera when she said that. And we get to Ant-Man's van with the quantum portal. Somehow it gets triggered on by a little rat, and Ant-Man comes through, and he's being introduced to a world that he doesn't know about. He doesn't know what's happened since he was gone, and he doesn't know he's been gone for 5 years. He learns that everyone believes that he was vanished in the snap. He goes to a memorial, he sees his own name on there. He goes looking for his daughter, and that's an emotional scene. Even though it's a teenager now playing his daughter, when you see that play out, you're like, oh man, this is kind of sad. But kind of in a good way, because she sees that her dad is alive. And I said this before, this movie gets very emotional. Ant-Man goes right away to the Avengers compound. So he goes from San Francisco to New York, so I imagine this is like a day or two later. And since it looks like he drove the van, maybe like 3 days later, I'm not sure. He tells the Avengers that he was in a quantum realm. He asks them if anybody knows about quantum science, and he has an idea for a time machine. Though he says that's kind of dumb, it's not a time machine, it's a time machine. He has an idea of using it to go back in time sometime before the snap and possibly stop it. And he knows that the way that time works in a quantum realm, for us it was 5 years, for him it was 5 hours. He's looking for a scientist that can possibly work with that. So they decide to go contact Tony Stark. And we see now that him and Pepper are happily married, living in a cabin, and that he has a daughter named Morgan. He tells him that time travel is pretty much impossible, and what happened to Ant-Man was a fluke, and that he shouldn't have survived. He refuses to do it. He's also afraid to lose his family. So they decide to go get a bigger brain, or a big brain. And we go to meet Bruce Banner, who has now become Professor Hulk. He's figured out a way to combine both his personality and the Hulk to one person that he has control over. They don't really say how, he just says that he combines it with gamma treatment. It might have been cool to see that in a movie, but in a 3-hour movie where we have a lot going on, I can see why they didn't do it in this one. Also, Hulk is very famous here, which makes sense because he's been seen on TV as an Avenger. The kids see him, they want a picture with him, and of course they don't want a picture with Ant-Man because in this universe, who's really heard of Ant-Man? So that makes sense, and it's kind of a funny scene. Tony decides to tinker with time travel, and he figures it out. He decides that he can't hold on to this, that he needs help. Before Tony shows up, the Avengers do try a test, and they keep changing Ant-Man from an old man to a teenager to a baby. Tony shows up, and he explains that they're pushing time through him, and they need to figure out how to push him through time, and that he developed like a GPS thing that will help do that. Him and Cap reconcile, and they kind of have a moment. He gives him back his shield, and they decide they're gonna work together. And it's the first time in a while that Captain America and Iron Man have talked to each other in a civil way and agree on something. Hulk and Rocket Raccoon, they decide to go get Thor. And Thor is now king of New Asgard. but he's in a bad place right now. Thor's become kind of this alcoholic that doesn't want to do anything, and he's been through a lot in these movies. Hell, in 1 week he lost his whole kingdom, his world was destroyed, his brother died, half the Asgardians were killed, and then the next day he fails at saving the universe. So it's understandable where Thor is. And he looks literally like the Big Lebowski in a bunch of scenes. And a lot of people have turned him into a joke online, but he's really not a joke in this movie. At least in some stuff he is, but when you really think about it, yeah, he's been through a lot. Black Widow goes to get Hawkeye, and he's become Ronin. And it seems in this version of Ronin, he's an assassin basically trying to wipe out every bad guy. Like, he's going after drug cartels. It looks like he's going after a Yakuza in one scene. He's just taking them out. Though in some comics, he's an assassin for hire, but here it seems like he's freelance. Black Widow recruits him and brings him in, and is trying to give hope to him. The Avengers then go into a huge thinking session on where the stones are, at what time and point is the best time to go get them. And it seems like they have every conversation that every fan has had pretty much for the last year. Like, if the Avengers were to use time travel, where would they go? They even have the conversation, well, since we can go back in time, did we just go back in time and kill Thanos as a baby? And Hulk explains, going back in time doesn't change your present. That going back in time, you have already experienced that stuff, and that your past now becomes your future. And that anything you experienced back then is now your current experience. It doesn't change you. It just changes a different timeline. They come up with a few missions. Hulk, Captain America, and Iron Man, Ant-Man go to New York 2012 during the battle. During that time, Hulk goes for the Time Stone. He finds out that he's too early for Doctor Strange. And we get to meet Tilda Swinton. I can't remember her character's name, which was a surprise. I didn't expect to see her in this movie. And they have a conversation about Doctor Strange. He explains that he gave the stone away, and she realizes that if he gave the stone away, there's a reason. It wasn't a mistake, that he's supposed to be the best of them. So she ends up handing the stone over to Hulk, and believes that this is fate, and that everything that's going on is supposed to happen for a reason. Which I kind of thought at the end of Infinity War that he's seen how it ends, so he knows that giving away the stone has to help. Whether the fans hated him during a whole year, Captain America goes and gets the scepter from Loki. And he kind of does it in an easy way. I thought he was going to end up having to fight everyone in an elevator again. But he tricks them by saying Hell Hydra, and they think, oh, he's Hydra, so let's just hand this over. And Ant-Man points out something, that the strike team for S.H.I.E.L.D., they look like bad guys. Why would we trust them back then? Even though they weren't supposedly bad guys, they look like bad guys. Iron Man points out that he says the costume is not flattering to Captain America's ass. Ant-Man says that's a great ass. As far as I'm concerned, that's America's ass. And then Captain America ends up in a fight with Captain America of that time. He does tell him that Bucky's still alive, and he knocks him out using the scepter. And after that, he looks down and goes, wow, that really is America's ass. Ant-Man goes onto that time's Tony Stark, goes inside the arc reactor and pulls a wire. That way it gives him a mild cardiac arrest. That way everyone is a little bit distracted, and then Tony was supposed to get the Tesseract. But things get knocked around, and by accident, Loki ends up with the Tesseract and disappears in a portal. Not only do Ant-Man and Iron Man fail at this, but it leaves a question like, where's Loki? I feel like the answer is going to be on Disney Plus with the Loki show. Probably not going to be called the Loki show. I think right now it's being called Loki. It's probably going to show his adventures traveling around with the Tesseract, and I imagine it ends with him being back at this point, being arrested again. That's my prediction. I don't know if that's how they're going to do it. I assume that's how they're going to address the Disney Plus show. Rocket and Thor go to the events of Thor: The Dark World, making that movie even better now. And it wasn't that strong of a Thor movie, but it gave a lot of information about the ether, and it gave a lot of information about the whole Marvel universe. Now this movie has made that movie better. Their plan is to distract Jane with Thor, and Rocket will stab her with a thing that extracts the ether. But they're going in with a fat Thor that looks nothing like that current time's Thor. So that's a little flawed on their plan. And Thor is like a messed up alcoholic and he wants to go to the wine cellar. So Rocket goes to Jane by himself. They actually brought back Natalie Portman for this, but from what I understand, they used a deleted scene and they only used her for dialogue to record something in a distance. So it's cool they brought her in, but they didn't film anything new with her, but they recorded new stuff. Thor ends up talking to his mother. They have a good conversation. I can tell he wants to tell his mom that she dies today, but she doesn't want to know. And Rocket is seen running. I guess he already stabbed her and took the ether out. And Thor gets his hammer and sees that he's still worthy. So they go back to our current time. War Machine, Nebula, Black Widow, and Ronan all go into space during the events of the first Guardians of the Galaxy. War Machine and Nebula wait around for Peter Quill to show up to steal the Power Stone. Black Widow and Ronan go to Vilmur to go get the Soul Stone. Now during this time, while they're waiting, Nebula reveals who's all looking for the Power Stone at this time. And of course the audience knows it's her, Thanos, and her sister. And we see Thanos and them at that time. And by complete accident, Nebula of that time can see stuff that Nebula of our time can see, because their computer is linked. Thanos sees that he does succeed in getting the stones, and he believes that this is his destiny. War Machine and Nebula end up knocking out Peter Quill. They take his holder, and they end up taking the Power Stone. And as they're trying to go back to our time, Nebula accidentally gets stuck back, and we see that Thanos has control over her, basically using his current time Nebula. And he tortures her and keeps trying to find information. He then uses his Nebula in her place and trades them out and sends her back to their time, which would be our time. Black Widow and Ronan go to Vilmur to retrieve the Soul Stone. They do meet Floating Red Skull, and he talks to them. Red Skull explains the only way to get the Soul Stone is to sacrifice his soul. A soul for a soul. Black Widow and Ronan have a discussion. Ronan believes that he needs to sacrifice himself in order to save his family, and Black Widow believes that this is the only way she can save everyone. They have this back and forth fight of who's going to sacrifice themselves. And I really thought there for a minute that it was going to be Ronan, even up until the end. And it ends up being Black Widow. And it's extremely sad the way it plays out. And you can see the emotional toll. She went from a character who was sort of in Iron Man 2, not a whole lot of personality, to they build her character up, and then they kill her in this last movie, and there's a huge toll when she dies. And it was very emotional for Hawkeye / Ronan. Again, he went from like a tiny character in Thor to something very emotional where you're like, oh no, he's gonna give up his life so that he can save his family. So everything becomes really emotional there for a little bit. And it's even emotional later on when they tell the other Avengers. Captain America and Iron Man go to 1970 to a SHIELD facility. It's the same training camp where Captain America was basically made, and where Zola's computer brain ends up later on. We have a Stan Lee cameo, and it's like the smallest cameo, or one of the smallest ones. He's literally driving by the base saying, hey man, make peace, not war. It was cool to see him again. I believe this is the last cameo they filmed. I'm not 100% sure. I know they're going to put him in other movies, like in the background somehow, or a picture, or who knows, maybe CGI. Iron Man gets a Tesseract and meets his father. And it's about the time that Tony's going to be born soon. And it's kind of cool. He has this conversation about him. He tells him that he has a daughter. It's like Tony's trying to talk to his father and basically telling him that everything that's going on. He has an emotional hug, though you can tell on Howard Stark it seems a little awkward because he's like, I just met you, dude. Not knowing it's his son talking to him. And basically it's his son telling him that he has a granddaughter. And it's kind of emotional, but it's also kind of like a little funny because they're like, who are you? And Captain America, he grabs some Pym particles, and during that he sees Peggy, and you can see it's kind of emotional for him. Like, he sees she has a picture of him on the desk, so he sees that she still cares about him. And remember, early on, he says that she was the love of his life. He still carries around a picture of her in his pocket, which has got to be slightly awkward, because he's made out with Sharon Carter, her niece. Yeah, does everybody remember that scene in Captain America Civil War where he made out with her? And then Falcon and Bucky, like, shook their heads like, yeah. It's, like, slightly awkward. So Captain America and Iron Man complete their mission and go back to our time. Once they're back in our time, they reveal to everybody that Black Widow has died. And you can see it still affects Hulk, like he still cares about her. So they decide that no matter what, they have to make sure this counts. I mean, that was the consensus before, but now there's even more stakes. They build their own Infinity Gauntlet, and it looks like a huge Iron Man glove with the stones in it. They talk about who can do the snap. Thor wants to do the snap because he believes it's the only thing that he'll do that will matter, even though he's saved the world several times. But he wants redemption for losing. They have a discussion, and Hulk believes that it needs to be him. He knows it could probably kill him, but since the stones are giving off mainly gamma radiation, he believes that he was made for this. Hulk puts on the Infinity Gauntlet and does a snap, and we see right away a burned part of Hulk, just like it did with Thanos, and it affected him dramatically. We do see that people have started to come back right away as Hawkeye gets a phone call. Nebula sets off the time portal, and we see Thanos' warship coming through it. They immediately go into space, or kind of hovering over Avengers headquarters, and they fire. They reduce the entire Avengers facility to rubble. War Machine, Rocket, and Hulk all get trapped underneath. Hulk is trying to hold it up so that Rocket and War Machine can still live. Ant-Man is somewhere else and he's on their way to rescue them. Ronan ends up next to the glove. and is trying to keep it safe from Thanos. And all of his alien men are trying to capture him or take it. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor all face off against Thanos. And it looks amazing. It looks like in a comic book, just like when they team up, because they've teamed up several times in a comic to go after one bad guy, or to have a huge fight, or to lead the Avengers. And there's so many comic book covers, so many paintings, so many stuff, so many fan art showing those three Avengers up there against something bad, or leading the Avengers. And when it's done here, it's like, oh, that's amazing! Because we've seen that so many times where it's those three leading the charge. And here, I didn't really realize it until I was thinking about it after the movie. It's like, wait, we never really got that in other Avenger movies. Yeah, they lead the Avengers, or they're part of the huge fight, but we never had, like, those three face off against something else together, which is a huge step from the first Avengers, where those three are fighting each other in the woods. Thor summons his axe and Mjolnir, and it's cool. Even though Thor's fat, he has all the armor on, he looks like a big badass Viking. Like, he looks like a fat Viking, but he still looks like he can kick ass. And they get into a huge fight with Thanos. This time, Thanos says that he sees that the universe is not grateful for what he will do. Because remember, this is past Thanos. So he believes that he needs the Infinity Gauntlet this time to completely destroy everything. And then start over. And only give him a world of being thankful for what he's giving them. So now there's even more at risk. Thanos is now wanting to destroy everything. And we've seen that he can do it. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor get into a huge fight. Iron Man gets knocked out. Thor gets thrown to the side. Captain America gets thrown to the side. Then Iron Man is out again. Thor and Thanos are facing off, and it looks like Thanos is about to put the axe in Thor's chest. And then Mjolnir hits him in the back, causing Thanos to drop the axe. And we see the hammer, it goes past Thor, and it goes to Captain America. It's so amazing. Like, we've seen this in the comic. We've seen this a few times. We kind of saw it in Age of Ultron that he could slightly move the hammer, which makes you think that he knows he can move it, but he decides not to, so he doesn't show off. And we're like, why didn't he pick it up then? But here we finally get it. We see that Captain America is worthy. And it's amazing. Not only does he get to pick it up, does he move it, but he wields lightning. He has the power of Thor. So we're seeing an extremely superpowered Thor-like Captain America. And it's so amazing. Everyone in the audience just cheered at that moment. I looked to the side. My kids and my wife, they looked really happy. They were like, wow. This is one of those moments that makes comic book fans go, wow, this is great. I'm so glad we got to see this. And he really uses it. Like, he uses the shield and the hammer to fight, and Captain America really uses it. Like, he throws his shield and bounces lightning off of that to hit Thanos, and it looks so amazing. Like, I would have to see this maybe a few more times just to describe the entire fight, but it looks so cool. There's even a point where Thor uses his lightning to charge up Iron Man to shoot Thanos, and that looks cool, and if I remember right, that actually happens a little bit earlier. But man, this fight's amazing, and we see Thanos finally starts beating Captain America, and you think at first like, oh no, like he could lose here. Like, this could be where he bites the dust. Like, we had a cool scene, but maybe Captain America dies here. Okay, just when you think Captain America is gonna die, every Avenger that got snapped back comes back. And at first you hear on Cap's radio, you hear, hey Cap, on your left. And you can barely hear it. And then a bunch of portals, like you can tell they're done by Doctor Strange, opens up. First comes Black Panther and his crew, and then comes through every other Avenger ever in the MCU, and it looks amazing. I started getting emotional right then and there, like, wow, they made this happen. And then even more so when you see Spider-Man swing through. And I swear to God, I saw Howard the Duck. I googled it later on. Yes, you do see Howard the Duck show up. And it looks emotional. And we have every Avenger line up. You see Spider-Man say to Iron Man, he must have passed out or something, and really when he turned to dust. And that when he came to, Doctor Strange was there, and he says it's been 5 years, and that there's no time, and basically they rushed everyone here. So Doctor Strange and every other magic guy that can make a portal, because, you know, they showed all of them, showed up, got every Avenger, everyone from space, everyone that they could, to show up here. And it looks like this all-out war is about to happen. And we finally hear Captain America say, Avengers, assemble, and they all charge. They managed to make a splash page from a comic come to life in a movie. And if you don't know what a splash page is, it's like a huge page. Usually it's 1 or 2 pages, sometimes both on a fold out, or sometimes like a fold out and it goes to like 3 or 4. And it's just huge, action-packed battle sequence with all superheroes, or huge story point. Something huge that spreads out on the pages. They managed to make a splash page come to life on a movie, and it looks so amazing. They start fighting left and right. I'm not going to go into huge details over everything. The Infinity Gauntlet gets passed around a bunch, and they know they have to send the stones back in time. And the only time machine that's left is Ant-Man's van, so they're going to try to set that up. Thanos steals the gauntlet at one point. Thanos gets in a fight with Scarlet Witch, and she's extremely powerful. She's coming to the point where she's about to kill Thanos. Thanos orders his warship to rain fire on everything. He doesn't care if he hurts his own men. So they start raining fire, and it looks like the Avengers are losing. And then the rain of fire kind of stops and goes and starts shooting in the sky. And Captain Marvel shows up. She destroys the warship right away. This movie shows Captain Marvel more powerful than her own solo movie. Like, it showed her pretty powerful in the Captain Marvel movie, but in this movie it shows her extremely powerful. It shows her even more so here. Thanos tries to take the Infinity Gauntlet, and then Captain Marvel fights him for it and takes it off of him. And while they're in a fight, he tries to headbutt her, and she doesn't move, and showing how powerful she really is. They get into a fight, she takes off with the glove. She tries to head to the van to send everything back in time, and then Thanos destroys the van. And they get into a further fight, and Thanos ends up with the glove. Tony tries to take it from him. He looks at Doctor Strange. He doesn't signal, and he doesn't fully say, this is it. So Tony fights Thanos again, and during the fight, you can't really tell fully what's going on, and then Thanos knocks off Iron Man. He snaps again, thinking he's gonna get this. And he says when he snaps, he goes, I am inevitable. And once he snaps, nothing happens. He looks at the gauntlet, and all of the stones are missing. If we cut back to Iron Man, we see that he somehow got all the stones off right then and there, and it's forming onto his hand, and Iron Man says, I am Iron Man. And at that point in time, I was like, man, they should really play like the Iron Man music here. But then again, it would break the mood because it's so serious. He snaps, and Thanos and all of his army die. Iron Man saves the world. And we see that the snap burned up most of Iron Man, and that the power killed him. He sees Pepper and Spider-Man one more time. This time Spider-Man's crying. And it's sad and emotional. Like, this is the end of Iron Man's arc from his first movie to now. 11 years build up to this. And Pepper says to him, you don't have to protect us anymore. We're all right. Basically telling him, you can let go. Everyone's safe. Well, I know that's what she said, but... And now that everyone is safe, the world is saved, all existence is saved, he passes away, and you see his arc reactor fade out. And it's sad. I kind of thought there was a chance Iron Man would die in this movie, and then even more so right then and there. Of course, that was when I knew he died, but to see it play out, it's so strong. You know, in the first Avengers, Captain America tells him, you're not the guy to lay down on the wire. And which at that point in time, he was right. But then later on, he saves New York by throwing the missile into space. And then, especially now this, he sacrificed himself to save everything. They have a huge funeral. And everyone that Iron Man has affected, well, at least say he's met, shows up. Because you could say the entire universe was affected by Iron Man. Especially now that he saved it. But everyone that he's worked with or sort of been in contact with shows up. Even the little boy from Iron Man 3, though he's a teenager now. And it's so sad and it's so emotional. And it's filmed so well. From what I heard, they got everyone in one shot, which is amazing. Also crazy when you think about it of how many actors had to show up for that one shot. Because they could have easily filmed people separately on green screens and combined it. But man, they really worked on this scene. I also heard they told everyone they were showing up to Iron Man's wedding, and they didn't tell them until they were actually filming what was going on. And it's definitely a hero's funeral. Then we get a part with his daughter, where she's saying, I want cheeseburgers. And Hogan replies, I'll get you all the cheeseburgers in the world. I didn't know until later on that's supposed to be a callback to the first Iron Man, where he's like, I want cheeseburgers. And then they get cheeseburgers. But man, that's so great. Iron Man leaves this important speech before they went time traveling that they play at the funeral. And of course, he doesn't know that he's gonna die, but he leaves it just in case they fail. And he thought if there was gonna be a problem, it would be with time traveling. Not like another Thanos showing up trying to destroy everything again. So he gives this big, huge, hopeful speech. Sometime after all that, they built another time machine. They're going to send Captain America back to return all the stones to the points that they took the stones, so that nothing's disrupted. There won't be a huge ripple in time, and that they'll still save everyone because the stones will be right where they took it. Also, a Thor's hammer and Mjolnir, because you gotta return that too. Right before that, we see that Thor goes with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it looks like he's gonna be in Guardians 3, or maybe he gets dropped off. Who knows? It looks really cool though. So anyway, back to Captain America going back in time. They set up everything, and they send him back in time. And Hulk explains that for him, it'll take as long as he needs. For us, it will be like 5 seconds because they're going to bring him back right away. When they try turning on the time machine, he doesn't come back. At first, Falcon and Bucky think that, oh no, something happened. And they're trying to get Hulk to turn it back on to get him back. And Hulk's trying to bring him back. But then they notice an old man at a bench. And Falcon goes over there. He says, wait. And he sees it's an old Captain America. It's old Steve Rogers. Though that Steve is probably in his hundreds. Technically, he's in his late 90s if you think about it. But when you think of if it's that Steve Rogers, if it's our Steve Rogers going back in time and waiting, living out time, we see on the bench an old Steve Rogers. Falcon walks up to him and asks him, did something go wrong? Or did something go right, and he decided not to come back? And Steve Rogers explains that he decided to live some of that great life that Tony was talking about. So he decided to stay back in time. And he hands his shield to Falcon, and it's amazing. It's definitely passing the torch. Yes, we know Bucky does become Captain America in the comics and in the movies. We were hoping to see that. And yes, Falcon does become Captain America in the comics. I have to agree with the Russos that Falcon becoming Captain America first in the movies makes more sense. At least character-wise. And they have this sweet conversation. And you see that he got married. And he asks Captain America, do you want to talk about her? And he says, no, I don't think so. And it's this warm, heartwarming scene that you think finally he gets to live his life. And I was like, it's gotta be Peggy Carter. And they go to a scene where it seems like either it's late 40s or early 50s. It's Steve Rogers dancing with Peggy Carter. And you assume it's like their living room. So he went back in time, returned all the stones, and then went further back in time and ended up with Peggy Carter. Now, I noticed some arguments online like, How did he return the stones? Do we need to see this on Disney Plus? I think it's fine right there. Does this mess with everything because Peggy Carter gets married? I don't think it does. This could be like a John Connor situation where the entire time Steve was back there. Like Steve did get married, and that Peggy Carter kept it quiet on who she married, knowing that if they say something that might disrupt time, it might ruin stuff. And the reason I say John Connor is because in Terminator, John Connor sent his dad back in time to protect his mom. And of course she didn't know until later on that that would be John's father. And that technically that was always supposed to happen in that time. That's what I'm saying here, that he was always there. And of course he has to take it upon himself not to ruin time, not to change anything. And I think it's a sweet ending to Captain America. Yeah, it's an amazing ending to this movie. Again, this entire thing is very emotional, and it's very high risk. The stakes are high for the heroes. The stakes are sort of high for the villains because you know they had the power to win. You know there's a good chance they could pull this off. So that raises everything for the Avengers. You know, I could talk about this movie all day. I could go back and forth on everything. I could, try to talk about every single scene. I don't even think I talked about every single scene. I talked about the entire movie overall, but I could go into details on this, and that. It's an amazing movie. Go check it out if you haven't already. Then again, if you're watching this because it's a spoiler review, you kind of ruined the entire movie. Then again, that's the point of a spoiler review. Though I'm sure you can find stuff that I didn't point out. Though later on, I'm sure on my next viewing I can point out stuff I missed. Overall, I give this movie 10 out of 10 Iron Gauntlets. And please do not spoil this for other people who haven't seen it. Don't spoil the movie. There are people who work. There are people who are busy. They have families. Those in the military that are deployed that can't watch it. Thank you for watching my video.